she had stopped looking for anything long before he appeared. Not just love, that word had lost its shape and meaning in her life, but even the gentle sparks of possibility that once used to flicker in a room full of strangers had grown dim. Years of shallow beginnings and quieter endings had left her with a carefully maintained shell of quiet politeness and casual charm, the kind people call calm, though what they really mean is untouched. In truth, she hadn't been moved in a very long time. She had become someone who observes, but no longer expects, someone who smiles without letting the smile reach her eyes, someone who listens well but guards her own words like secrets not worth sharing. And then, he showed up. Not dramatically, not in a way that demanded her attention, but almost incidentally, as if the universe had gently placed him in the background of her life, waiting for her to notice him not because he announced himself, but because he stayed. His name was Eli. He worked on a different floor of the building where she handled editorial reviews for a mid-sized publishing house, a job that kept her behind screens and between lines, a job that suited her. She didn't remember when she saw him first, only that he didn't seem new. He was the kind of man who looked like he belonged anywhere, quiet, focused, kind in a way that didn't try too hard, and somehow both present and invisible. She only truly noticed him when she realized he had been noticing her all along. It began with small things. One morning, she walked into the office after a sleepless night, coffee in hand, hair messier than usual, and a book tucked under her arm, a battered second-hand novel with a cover that had long faded. She sat down without speaking to anyone, not even glancing up from the page. A few hours later, during a break, he passed by her desk and said casually, without stopping, "That's one of my favorites." She looked up, startled, and he was already gone. No smirk. No comment. Just those 6 words. But they clung to her like static. She tried to brush it off, maybe it was coincidence, maybe he just recognized the cover, but when she returned the book to her bag that evening, she noticed a small post-it note had been placed inside the back flap. It wasn't signed. Just a handwritten quote from the book, underlined twice. A quote she herself had folded the corner of a page to remember. It was the kind of detail you don't expect a stranger to notice. The kind you assume no one sees but you. And that's when she started watching him. Not obsessively, not all the time, but enough to realize he moved through the building with the ease of someone who didn't need to prove himself, who didn't interrupt conversations, who always let others speak first. He never talked over people. Never looked at his phone when someone else was talking. He always remembered names. And not just names, preferences, moods, hesitations. Once, during a group lunch, someone asked her if she wanted something sweet, and before she could answer, he said, almost absently, "She doesn't like overly sweet things. Dark chocolate, maybe. Never milk." No one blinked. She did. And it wasn't what he said, it was the way he said it, like he'd simply observed and remembered, as though memorizing her wasn't a performance, but a reflex. But even then, she didn't let herself believe it meant anything. He was probably like that with everyone, thoughtful, attentive, kind. She had met men like that before. Men who were careful with everyone. Gentle by default. She didn't want to mistake consideration for affection. That mistake, she had made it once. And once had been enough. But Eli wasn't performing kindness. He wasn't placing compliments into the air to be caught like butterflies. He just knew things. And kept them quietly, like he was collecting pieces of her not to hold over her, but to give back when she needed them most. Like that afternoon when she spilled tea across her desk in a flurry of deadlines and messages and missed calls. She hadn't even noticed she was shaking. She barely managed to whisper "I'm fine" to no one in particular. An hour later, he passed her a folded paper towel and a small packet of tissues, no commentary, and walked away. And tucked inside was a wrapped biscuit. Ginger. Her favorite. She never told anyone that. And in that moment, she realized. He wasn't just noticing. He was learning her. Silently. Gently. Fully. She didn't fall in love with him. It wasn't like that, not a fall, not a drop, not an all-consuming wave that knocked her off balance. It was slower than that. Quieter. Like her skin had grown used to warmth after years of cold, and only now began to realize it was safe to take off the coat. There was no moment of dramatic clarity, no sudden rush of emotion that left her breathless. Just small moments. Repeating themselves. Anchoring themselves inside her until she couldn't separate memory from feeling anymore. Like the way he never interrupted. Like the way he didn't flinch at her silence. Like the way he passed by her desk on Mondays with a note that said, "Hope your weekend was kind to you." Like the way he always stood just far enough not to press, but close enough to be noticed. She began looking forward to mornings again, not because anything particularly exciting would happen, but because there was a comfort in knowing he'd be there, somewhere in the same hallway, in the same lift, in the same quiet rhythm of a workday where she no longer felt entirely alone. And the strange part was, he never asked her for anything. Not her number. Not her time. Not her attention. He simply waited. Waited like someone who already knew she wasn't the kind of person you pursued loudly. Waited like someone who understood that love, for her, wasn't about being swept off her feet, it was about knowing someone was willing to walk slowly beside her, until she decided to reach out and take their hand. One rainy afternoon, the kind that blurred windows and slowed cities down to a hush, she found herself alone in the small break room, warming her hands on a ceramic mug she didn't remember bringing. Eli walked in. He didn't speak at first. Just looked at her, nodded, and made tea, not for himself, but for her. Without asking. The kind she always picked. With one sugar. No milk. She smiled, faintly. He sat down across from her, but not too close. And after a long moment of silence, one of those silences that feel full, not empty, he said quietly, "I don't know what you've been through to make you look away every time someone sees you, but I just want you to know, I see you, and I don't mind waiting." She stared at him. Not because it was dramatic. Not because it was romantic. But because it was the exact thing she hadn't realized she'd needed someone to say, the very thing she'd been pretending she didn't care to hear. That someone could see her. And still stay. She didn't answer right away. Her throat tightened. Not from fear, but from recognition. Of how long it had been since she'd allowed herself to be seen. Truly. Not for her performance. Not for her calm. But for all that was beneath it. And he didn't push. He just sipped his tea. Quietly. Beside her. In the days that followed, something in her began to shift. Not all at once. Not obviously. But like a curtain being drawn slowly open. She started to text him, short messages at first, comments on books, random thoughts at midnight, photos of her cat half asleep on a pillow. He responded the same way he always had, calmly, thoughtfully, with no expectation of more. But then there was the night she couldn't sleep. The one where she messaged him, "You awake?" And he replied immediately, "Always. What's on your mind?" And she told him. Everything. Not in a dramatic outpour, but in a stream of unfiltered honesty, the kind she'd never shared with anyone in one sitting. Her fears. Her doubts. Her failed attempts at love. Her need for space. Her obsession with order. Her guilt for always retreating. Her fear that she might never be enough for someone to stay. And he didn't say you're wrong. He didn't try to fix her. He simply answered. Then let me stay, just exactly the way you are. And she cried. Not because of sadness. But because, for the first time in a very long time, she believed him. Love didn't come with roses. It came with small notes on Mondays. With ginger biscuits when she was overwhelmed. With someone remembering the way she folded pages, the way she bit her lip when thinking, the way she always waited 3 seconds before answering hard questions. He hadn't come to change her. He came because he'd already seen her. And stayed. And for someone who had stopped believing in love, that was more than enough. Sometimes, love doesn't arrive with a loud knock. It comes in quietly. Remembers your tea. Waits for your silence to break. And holds space for the moment you decide you're finally ready to let it in.